Good evening. So we shall start. We need to learn something about the answer writing technique. So let us proceed with some important factors, and we will at least discuss the 10 questions in modern India. And these questions are very important and analytical in nature. So out of the many things that we have to discuss, let's talk about something. Okay, the question. So when you start writing the answer, so length matters a lot, that how much the words that normally the question paper is demanding. So there are 3 points in question answer session, that you talk about the introduction and then the main body, and then we have the conclusion. Most of the students, they are very curious to think that, sir, what is introduction, what is conclusion, what is main body, that you have to find out. See, so first of all, give time to understand the theme of question. Theme of question is very important. So read question at least twice or thrice to understand the theme of question, at least. Then second, find out the key points of this question. Then third, look, there are either 150 words question answer or the 250-word answer. So you have to find out how much time you have left with. So compared to the all questions, that we have the 20 questions suppose, and there are 180 minutes. So we have 9 minutes for each question. So as per the words you decide that what is the length of the question. If suppose it is a 150 minutes, then you can't give the 9 minutes, so little less, and then 250 words slightly more. So the time calculation is very important. So you have to write, you have to express as per the theme of the question. Your knowledge regarding the entire key points must be rotated for the 8 minutes or the 9 minutes, whatever the time permit. So time is very important in calculation and writing the answer. So don't leave any question, write all the questions, and with respect to time, how much word and then how much time you have to devote. You have to calculate well in advance, right? So whether it is 150 words question or the 250 words question. I generally suggest the student that whenever there is a short question like 150 words, so if you wasted the 50 words for the introduction and you wasted the 50 words for conclusion, so main question where the examiner is actually looking from you is left with only 50 words. So therefore you have less number of words to express yourself. So my suggestion is, don't write introduction or the conclusion in such questions. So in GS question paper, this is not an essay and this is not a full length optional. So in GS question paper, you hardly bother about introduction and conclusion. Suppose there are 250 words. So don't devote 30 to 35 words in introduction and 30 to 35 words of the 50 words in conclusion, and rest should be your exemplary answer. So in GS examination, the introduction and conclusion do not matter a lot. Your points and number of questions that you have, number of issue that you touch this question is very important. Okay, so hopefully try your level best to find the answer. Suppose I am taking some example. This is the question. Suppose discuss the discuss the course of the revolutionary movement. Course of the revolutionary movement in 1920s and 1930s with a special reference to Bengal, right? So look at this question. Question is 1920s and 1930s. So course of the revolutionary movement in 1920s and 1930s. 1930s. So obviously this question is 250 words. Then you'll say that in 1920s the revolutionaries had a different nature compared to the pre-war phase. In this phase, revolutionaries had, okay, definite objective like socialism, republicanism, and secularism. Revolutionaries were inspired by many books. So this phase was more effective. Then start writing the what was the influential factors in this phase. You know, revolutionaries were inspired by Lala Hardayal. Lala Hardayal was a great philosopher. He was activist of the Ghadar movement in San Francisco. But after that, he was expelled from America. He settled in Punjab. So he was iconic among all the revolutionaries. Lala Hardayal, he was great organizer. He was propagandist. He raised the fund. He was a fund raiser. And then he had determination to lead the India's independence. That is the violent uprooting of British Empire. So most of the revolutionaries, those who were inspired by Lala Hardayal, were also thinking in the same way. That is to repeat the revolt of 1857 and to go for the violent uprooting of British Empire in India. This is the formula. This is the way that you have to think. Okay. Then you'll start pointing all the facets of 1920s and 1930s. You must not miss any important facts like establishment of HRA and subsequently Hindustan Republican Association, and at the same time you'll find that the Kakuri train action, and in this Kakuri train action in 1925 we have 4 persons were hanged. 4 persons were hanged. Okay, so this is how you start from here, and then name of HRA was changed to HRSA. So HSRA, that is Hindustan Socialist Republican Association. Hindustan Socialist Republican Association, that Bhagat Singh, Chandrasekhar Azad, Bhagwati Charan Bohra, Take the name of all important revolutionaries, those who were not associated with HRA. Now they are very active in HSRA. Then we'll talk about the Lahore conspiracy case. Okay, Lahore conspiracy case, and then you will talk about the Central Assembly bomb case. Central Assembly bomb case. You will definitely discuss about about the Public Safety Bill and Trade Dispute Bill. This is the main reason that why Bhagat Singh threw a bomb in the assembly. Okay. Revolutionaries, they were inspired by book of Sarat Chandra. Pather Dabi. Sachin Sanyal, he wrote Bandi Jeevan. So these are the books which really inspired. Bhagavati Charan Bohra, he wrote Philosophy of Bomb. Philosophy of Bomb. So obviously these writings was very inspirational. Okay. Then at the same time, in 1930s, after hanging of Bhagat Singh, Rajguru and Sukhdev, it was looking like that revolutionary movement came to an end. But in 1930s, the revolutionary movement which was confined to Bengal and it was led by Surya Sen. He established Indian Republican Association. Look, Surya Sen, before becoming the revolutionary, he was a member secretary of the Chittagaon Congress Committee and he had participated in non-cooperation movement. But after the suspension of non-cooperation movement, he turned revolutionary, but he always intended, even though he had turned into revolutionary, but his intention was to establish the Gandhi Raj. So he was having the great faith in the Gandhi, but as far as his activities is concerned, it was beyond the activities of passive resistance. Therefore, he believed in the active resistance. So here IRA. There are so many women had participated. There are so many women's participants. We have women participants like women participants like Kalpana Datta, Beena Das, Preeti Lata, Kalpana Datta, Beena Das, Preeti Lata, Shanti Ghosh, Suniti Chaudhary. They had conducted the most successful revolutionary activities, that is Chittagaon Armory Raid. Okay. So after writing all these things, one thing that you have to mention here, that in this phase 1920s and 30s, most of the revolutionaries were oriented towards the left wing ideology. Left wing ideology. They were actually revolutionaries with the help of peasant and the labor. So therefore the socialism was the main idea. So therefore they were very much associated with the Communist Party of India, which was established. Okay. So these things you have to write in the segments of this question, that discuss the course of the revolutionary activities in India, course of the revolutionary activities in India in the 1920s and 30s. Look at the second question. Growth of Indian nationalism was due to both external factors as well as internal factors. So this question, the nationalism, in the second half of 19th century, there was rise of nationalism in different parts of the world. Among the international factor, the French revolutionary ideas, international factor, French revolutionary ideas, and unification of Italy and Germany played a very significant role. But the nationalism in India also evolved due to certain internal factors. Certain internal factors. So international factor as well as internal factor. You have to write it well. So this is the small parts of the introduction. So introduction is rather very small. So you must write a very small part of introduction that I told you. So rise of nationalism in the second half of 19th century, 1850s. This is the period when all over the world and the French revolutionary ideas, equality, liberty, fraternity, which is a basis of the rise of nationalism, had deep impact not only in the Europe but in India as well. And at the same time, there were degree of consciousness developed among the Indians, which led to the rise of nationalism. Leave this introduction here and then started talking about there are many internal factors, right? Among the many international factors, politico-administrative and unification, politico-administrative unification of British rule, politico-administrative unification of British rule. Okay, you understand the meaning that in entire India there was uniform revenue administration, uniform judicial administration, uniform general administration, CRPC and other revenues. So colonial administration was very impactful. It was exploitative. So obviously, if exploitation is by the common enemy and exploitation is uniform throughout the British India, therefore that will create the commonality of interest among the Indians, and that is how they had created a very strong bond which is called nationalism. Look, remember one thing, that before 1850s, common Indians were more comfortable in identifying themselves as Gujarati, Marathi, Telugu, Tamil rather than calling Indian. Before 1850s, common Indians were more comfortable in identifying themselves as Gujarati, Marathi, Telugu, Tamil rather than calling Indians. So therefore, but after 1850s, the nationalist consciousness overshadowed the regional consciousness. Nationalist consciousness had overshadowed the regional consciousness. So politico-administrative unification. Then second important factor is that is introduction of English. Everything done by the Britishers, actually for the colonial establishment, but the side effect of that ultimately led to the rise of nationalism. So because English had created the linguistic coherence, so common Indians were more comfortable in identifying themselves, and thereafter they had inter-regional communication possible. Otherwise, linguistic barrier was the biggest barrier in the rise of nationalism. Linguistic barrier was the biggest barrier in the rise of nationalism. So inter-regional communication became possible with the help of English. Third point is socio-religious reform movement. Socio-religious reform Okay. I hope all of you have studied that all the three trends of the social reform movement, whether it was reformation, whether it is revivalism, whether it is status quoism, ultimate outcome was four types of nationalism. One is called the political nationalism, one is called economic nationalism, and other was called cultural nationalism, and of course the rise of the various fundamental ideas which is collectively called nationalism. Okay, so socio-religious reform movement. Then fourth factor is, look at the fourth factor, it is like the means of communication established by the Britishers. Christian missionaries, Christian missionaries was a very important role, had played a very important role in the rise of nationalism. Christian missionaries. Then secondly, uh, we have the like railways, introduction of railways, telegraph, communication, all these facilities. So modern education, and these are the things which actually created awareness among the Indians, and this awareness was actually needed for the rise of nationalism. Among the international factor, okay, international factor, I told you that French revolutionary ideas, that is concept of equality, fraternity, and liberty. Equality, fraternity, and liberty is very important factor. Very important factor. And at the same time, unification of Italy and Germany. Unification of Italy and Germany. Italy become a nation, Germany become a nation. So unification of Italy and Germany in 1870s, it had deep impact on the entire rise of national issues. So Indians were also very much inspired by the rise of nationalism of these states. So unification of Italy and Germany. Indians were also very much inspired by the rise of these things. Okay, so rise of all these things. So Indian nationalism. Even the establishment of Indian National Congress. Okay, Indian National Congress, it had transformed nationalism into Indian national movement because it gave organizational structure to the rise of nationalism. So various consciousness which was scattered over entire India, it got a collective outburst in the form of the Congress. So the establishment of Congress definitely had played a very important role in the rise of nationalism and the nationalist consciousness. Okay, in the rise of nationalism and nationalist consciousness. Fine. Next point, it is related to conclusion part. You'll write that although nationalism is a process which is dependent on the various fundamentals, But at the same time, in India, if there is a balanced development of each and every region, and then balanced participation of the people in the development, and balanced benefit of the development, thereafter the integrating process will complete. That is the reason why it was called that India is in the process of nation building. So the process of nationalism, which had started in 1850s, is yet to complete, and India is aspiring nation. Like that you have to conclude. Like that you have to conclude. Okay, so rise of nationalism and international. So next third question is related to look at the statement. Bengal united is a power. Bengal united is a power. Bengal divided will pull Bengal in several different ways. So Bengal united is a power. Bengal divided will pull Bengal in several different ways. In the light of this statement, discuss that Lord Curzon did historical mistake which ultimately resulted in the aggressive nationalism. Okay, so Bengal united is a power, but Bengal divided will pull Bengal in several different ways. In the light of this statement, discuss that Lord Curzon did historical mistake which ultimately resulted in aggressive nationalism. So understand the theme of the question, that in the first decade of the 20th century, means 1900 to 1910, British had followed aggressive policy of divide and rule. So British had followed aggressive policy of divide and rule. And in this policy, two viceroys, one was the Lord Curzon, 1899 to 1905. Second was Lord Minto, 1905 to 1910. So Lord Curzon, Lord Minto, these two viceroys played a very significant role in the rise of nationalism. So Lord Curzon, he was intended to have the partition of Bengal. Right? Lord Curzon wanted to subside the Indian National Congress. Okay. So these are the two important things that you can learn from the Lord Curzon and the policy of Lord Curzon. Okay. So partition of Bengal, how it will subside the nationalism, and then subsidence of Indian National Congress, because the Indian National Congress had already become plank for Indian national movement. So look at this statement. What is this statement? Bengal united is a power. Bengal divided will pull Bengal in several different ways. Right? So there will be so many strengths within the Bengal. So this statement was actually made by Risley. Risley, he was Home Secretary of Britain. Home Secretary of Britain, Risley. And Risley had a talk with Curzon. Risley had talked with Curzon. Right? So Risley sent a telegram to Curzon, and Risley said symbolically that Bengal united is a power. And if we'll divide Bengal, it will pull in the several different ways. So the planning was, after division of Bengal, there should be internal crisis. And once the internal crisis will develop in Bengal, the feeling of nationalism which is coming out of Bengal will subside forever. This is the main intent. Look, Bengal was a large state, and all the ideas, moderate, extremist, revolutionaries, all the ideas, it comes to Bengal and spreaded in different parts of India. It comes to Bengal and is spreaded in different parts of India. Okay. So therefore, Curzon wanted to divide Bengal in such a way. Curzon wanted to divide Bengal in such a way that that there should be many social crises and economic crisis. Social crisis and economic crisis. So Bengal united is a power and Bengal divided will build Bengal in several different ways. So many social and economic crisis means there will be issue of communalism. There will be social division. Social division. Okay. Hindu-Muslim divide on the basis of demographic inequality. On the basis of demographic inequality. Hindu-Muslim divide on the basis of demographic inequality. Okay. Then at the same time, because of the social division, sabka saath, sabka vikas, no saath, no vikas. So obviously there will be economic crisis because jute economy will get affected. The jute is the basis of the economy of Bengal. And what is the combination of jute? That most of the jute cultivators are Muslims and most of the jute processor are Hindus. So jute is the economy because of the coordination between Hindus and Muslims. So once this it will get over, then jute economy will get affected. Okay. So these two things you have to write. So Bengal united is a power and Bengal divided will pull Bengal in several different ways. So demographic inequality is very important fact. Right? Social division of Bengal. Then at the same time, Curzon officially said that Bengal is a large state. So in order to have better administrative manageability, we need to divide Bengal. So official region was cited. Official region was cited as administrative region. Official region was cited as administrative region. Right? Administrative region. Okay. Official region was cited as administrative region. But look, there were many provinces much bigger than Bengal. Like Bombay, like Madras, much bigger than. So administrative region was not a convincing region behind the partition of Bengal. Though definitely it was to subside the rising tide of nationalism. Tide of nationalism. But the plan of the Curzon was already announced. But before that, Curzon would have implemented it. Curzon resigned because of the Curzon-Kitchener controversy. So once you wrote the line Curzon-Kitchener controversy, automatically the period of Lord Minto had started. So Lord Minto on 16th October 1905 implemented the partition of Bengal. So it was a brainchild of Lord Curzon, but actually it was implemented by Lord Minto. And after the implementation of the partition of Bengal, there was a boomerang effect. right? So boomerang effect on the partition of Bengal. There was boomerang effect on the partition of Bengal. Lord Minto II, 16th October 1905. So anti-partition movement started not only in Bengal but in different parts of India, right? So if Punjabis, if Tamilians, if Telugu, they started opposing the partition of Bengal, then obviously the partition, that is the nationalism, did not subsided, but it had suit sufficiently. So therefore the nationalism started shooting like anything. So Lord Minto II, 16th October 1905, anti-partition. So it was a historical blunder in the sense because partition of Bengal had united various form of the nationalism, various section of the Indian society, and at the same time the extremist politics in India had also got huge momentum, right? So extremist politics of India also got huge momentum, and most of the revolutionaries, they trace their descent from the extremist politics. Okay, because one believe in active resistance, another believe in passive resistance. So there was exact connection between extremist and the revolutionary, right? In one word, you can say that the idea of opposition which was preached by extremists, it was transformed into revolutionary by, that is how the plan was designed. So this is extremist politics. Huge momentum you can observe from here. Okay, it had boosted the Swadeshi movement. Swadeshi movement. Swadeshi movement got huge boost after the partition of Bengal, and therefore the British import on India had declined very sharply. In alone Bengal, there was a 50% decline in trade. Okay, historical blunder. Curzon did historical blunder. Historical blunder in the sense that it had provoked the nationalism and it had boosted the Swadeshi movement. What is the relevance of India for the British? It is import of British garment. So therefore, Swadeshi movement had badly affected the import of British garment. And that is reason why this became a very urgent national issue. Finally, the British had no option but to revoke the partition of Bengal after the continuous anti-partition movement. Rabindranath Tagore played a leading role in Hindu-Muslim unity, despite the fact that Muslim League had supported the partition of Bengal because Muslims are getting the separate province. Right? Muslims are getting the separate province. Finally, 1911, there was Grand Delhi Darbar. Grand Delhi Darbar. Grand Delhi Darbar was organized. Right? And after the organization of this Delhi Darbar, three big announcements was made by King George V, that no partition of Bengal. First thing, no partition of Bengal. Bihar was separated from Bengal, and at the same time, the capital of India shifted from Calcutta to Delhi. Okay, and therefore the anti-partition movement got over. So British came on the back foot. Number one thing. Secondly, that it had given a new wave of the extremist and the revolutionary movements, and therefore the nationalism had suits up. It had boosted the Swadeshi movement. It had united Indians like anything. which gave the very strong point of the rise of nationalism. So these are the things you have to write here in this question. So look at the question. Bengal united is a power, but Bengal divided will pull Bengal in several different ways. In the light of this statement, discuss that Lord Curzon did historical mistake which ultimately resulted in aggressive nationalism. Political freedom. Okay, look at this. Question number 4. Political freedom is the life breath of any nation. In the light of this statement, discuss that Aurobindo Ghosh gave genesis to the extremism and the passive resistance. Look, the role of the philosophers cannot be ruled out in any fundamental change in the politico-social affair and social-political affair. Okay, so out of the many great philosophers, those who affected the direction of the Indian national movement, Aurobindo Ghosh was one of the biggest philosopher of the time. One of the biggest philosopher of the time, that is Aurobindo Ghosh. Okay, so Aurobindo Ghosh, he laid the foundation of aggressive nationalism. He was associated with Anushilan Samiti. He was associated with Bande Mataram, and at the same time he was a father of extremism in India. Okay, Aurobindo Ghosh, he wrote New Lamps for Old. New Lamps for Old. So as per this discussion, that is what is called New Lamps for Old, he published the doctrine of passive resistance. Published the doctrine of passive resistance. Okay. Do you know the passive resistance in which there is no positive harm, but doing something so that government could be held in check. So normal function do not function. Normal function do not function. This is doctrine of passive resistance. That is doing something so that government could be held in check. Although there is no violence, but a strike, dharna, these are the fundamentals which is very unique. So passive resistance. He also wrote a poetic compilation called Savitri. In Savitri, Aurobindo Ghosh, he gave a new religious touch to Indian nationalism. He said that we are not fighting for the land. This is motherland. Matribhumi. So he gave the religious touch to nationalism. Aurobindo Ghosh. So Aurobindo Ghosh is rightly called as a father of extremism. So he was father of extremism and passive resistance, and thereafter the meaning like Lal, Bal and Pal had taken the moral lesson from the philosophical dimension of extreme nationalism projected by Aurobindo Ghosh. So Aurobindo Ghosh, he always talked about free constitution. Free constitution is a concept which is not under the influence of British Parliament. So he advocated formation of the free constitution in India. Okay. away from the influence of the British Parliament, away from the influence of British government. He said it will give lots of empowerment to the Indians, which is badly required to the Indians. So empowerment of Indians is possible only through when there is a establishment of free constitution in India. So lots of things was given to the Indians. And at the same time, Aurobindo Ghosh, he projected that through free constitution, political right will be assured. So this political right or political freedom is life breath of any nation. Life breath of any nation. So political right or political freedom is the life breath of any nation. This is what, if there is no political freedom, the nation is dead. So therefore, if you want to see India as a nation, there is a political freedom badly required to overcome all other intentions of the autocratic system. All other intentions of the autocratic system. So this is what the intention of Aurobindo Ghosh was. So he demanded that why not there should be a right consciousness among the public. The public must inspire to get the right by persuasion, by coercion. So this is the reason why the resistive force would be very high. He said, look at the statement, he said, only popular government, popular authority can challenge the autocracy. So he demanded the establishment of popular authority. Popular authority means the authority connected by the people, for the people, and therefore that is how the autocracy would be challenged. So how this popular authority only have the Indians would have the free constitution in it. So free constitution is a very important in the life and like of the Aurobindo Ghosh. And in this dimension of the concept of free constitution, he said that if there is no political freedom, then nation is dead. So this is the reason why this question is. But political freedom is the life breath of a nation. In the light of this statement, discuss that Aurobindo Ghosh gave genesis to the extremism and passive resistance. Okay. So fundamentally, the Aurobindo Ghosh, after he played a very active role in from 1890s to 1908, Aurobindo Ghosh was in the forefront of the nationalist ideas. And the idea of opposition which he expressed without bloodshed and violence, what he named is as a passive resistance. Right? So, Aurobindo Ghosh. So this question you can write in such a way. Next question is, throughout the British period, intensity of colonialism keep on rising, but objective of colonialism always remained the same. Look at this statement. Intensity of the colonialism keep on rising, but objective of the colonialism always remained the same. Always remain the same. So that is intensity keep on rising, but objective of colonialism always remained the same till 1947. Analyze. Okay. So idea of opposition, which was preached by extremism, was actually transformed into practicality by revolutionaries. But here The second question is very different. It is based on the economic history of India. You know, there are some great philosophers who discuss about the great economists who discuss about the economic history of India, like the R.P. Dutt, R.C. Dutt, Dadabhai Nauroji, G. Subramaniam Iyer. So R.P. Dutt, R.C. Dutt, Dadabhai Nauroji, G. Subramaniam Iyer, these are the stalwarts which actually gave a very good dimension to the rise of nationalism. R.P. Dutt, he wrote India Today. India Today. He wrote India Today. R.C. Dutt, he wrote Economic History of India. Dadabhai Nauroji, Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. And G. Subramaniam Iyer, he was the editor of The Hindu, the newspaper that you study, and in his editorial, he wrote many editorials related to the fundamentals of the economy and the exploitation of the economy. So these are the great stalwarts whose work was really inspiring. What I said, that R.P. Dutt, he wrote India Today. R.C. Dutt, R.C. Dutt, he was an ICS and he was a great economist. He wrote Economic History of India. Till date, this is the best to understand the colonial exploitation. Till date, this is the best book to understand the colonial exploitation. Okay, so Economic History of India. Till date, this is the best book to understand the colonial exploitation. Then we have the poverty and un-British rule in India. So poverty and un-British rule in India, that was a designated, this is a book which was written by Dadabhai Nauroji way back in 1860s, 1863. Okay, and then the G. Subramaniam Iyer, he was editor of The Hindu and his editorial many things was written. So R.C. Dutt, till date, I told you it is the best book to understand the colonial period. But as far as India Today is concerned, R.P. Dutt, he divided the phase of colonialism in three parts. There are three stages of colonialism. First stage, 1757 to 1813. This is called phase of mercantilism. Phase of mercantilism. 1757 to 1813, this is the phase of mercantilism. Second stage, phase of 1813 to 1860, this is free trade. Free trade. And the third stage is 1860 to 1947, and this is called finance capitalism. Finance capitalism. So there are three stages of colonialism: first stage, second stage, and third stage. (1757 to 1813), mercantilism, 1813 to 1860, the free trade, and then third is the finance capitalism. So mercantilism is an affair. Mercantilism, when the state initiative for the trade, state initiative for the trade, state initiative for the trade. State itself take part in the trading activities. State itself take part in the trading activities. This is called mercantilism. Okay, mercantilism. So here in this phase, this is the first phase when East India Company transformed into political power. Then the trade and commerce was the chief objective of this phase. First phase was actually, we have the first phase is actually trade and commerce. First phase was actually trade and commerce. And at the same time, the grant of Diwani in 1765, the British had implemented many ways to discuss the grant of Diwani, and finally it had resulted in establishment of permanent settlement. So economic policy was intended only for the trade and commerce and permanent settlement. Look at the question. Question is that throughout the British period, intensity of the colonialism keep on rising, but objective of colonialism always remained the same, and that is the till 1947. So what is objective and what is the meaning of colonialism? India became victim of British imperialism in order to serve the colonial interest of Britain. So objective of colonialism was to exploit India and then to benefit England. It was rightly said that the beauty of London was actually the bones and bloods of the cotton weavers and the laborers in India. Okay, so intensity of colonialism keep on rising. So trade and commerce, 1765 permanent settlement was, after that the permanent settlement was implemented in 1793. Okay, in this phase there was no big social policies not to interfere in internal affairs, not to interfere in the internal affairs. This is the social policy, not to interfere in the internal affairs. But large scale translation of books had started. Large scale translation of books had started. 1765. Second important, that political policy was indirect subordination. You must be knowing the subsidiary alliance. So in this phase, the political policy was a policy of indirect subordination. So this is the first stage. So economic policy, political policy, and the social policies. Okay. Second stage, 1813 to 1860, which is a phase of the free trade. So in 1813 to 1860, you know, this is the time when the Charter Act was passed. Charter Act of 1813 was passed. Was passed. So in Charter Act of 1813, monopoly of trade was abolished. monopoly of trade was abolished. The Charter Act of 1813, monopoly of trade was abolished. But here at this phase, the monopoly continued in tea trade and trade with China. Monopoly continued in tea trade and trade with China. So monopoly of trade was abolished, but monopoly continued in tea trade and trade with China. So therefore, many companies of England entered in India. They exploited raw material in order to fulfill the requirement of the British Industrial Revolution, right? So they taken the raw material. Then at the same time, you'll find that they had found India is a very lucrative market. They had found India a very lucrative market. Lucrative market. So raw material. 1813 to 1860. Lucrative market. So in this page, social policy was, the socio-religious reform movement. So British had adopted a very aggressive social policy. Many laws were passed in the name of abolition of social evils. Abolition of Sati, Widow Remarriage Act. So many laws were passed. Christian missionaries were permitted to operate in India, to exercise the humanitarian activities, to operate in India, and to exercise the humanitarian activities. So Christian missionaries was permitted to exercise the humanitarian activities. Aggressive nationalism. Okay. Then there is a one big fundamental that you have to understand: the political policy. The political policy was, that is, direct annexation. Direct annexation. That is, capture of Indian states. Capture of Indian states. By the war, by the policy of doctrine of lapse. So as maximum as possible. So the colonial period was really strengthened in the second page. But you can see there was Rayatwari settlement, Mahalwari settlement. So earlier the land revenue was confined only to the Bengal. Now it had extended to different parts of India. So intensity of the colonialism increased. Look at the question. Question is, throughout the British period, intensity of colonialism keep on rising, but objective of colonialism always remained the same. Whatever British did in India to exploit India, just for benefit of England. So I told you that the beauty of London was actually bones and bloods of our peasants and the cotton weavers. Okay. So this is how you can tackle this question. It is a very nice question. In the look at the third phase of the colonialism. Third phase of the colonialism, 1860 to 1947. In the third phase of colonialism, we have one important thing. What? That the economic policy was investment of the money to earn the more money. Okay. So in this phase, both secondary and tertiary sector was taken. So secondary sector, like there was development of industry. Okay. tertiary sector is the banking, railways, finance, institutions all had developed. So in this phase, you can see that it was looking like the India is developing. There was development of railways, development of telegraph, development of industries. So India was developing. But the objective was to exploit more by the development of India. Like I would like to tell you the railways. Railways had maximum exploitation of India. Railway served in two ways. First thing, what is the purpose of railway? Railway served in two ways. The source of raw material, the first purpose, source of raw material, it was transported to England. Source of raw material was transported to England, right? And finished product of England was sent to villages. Finished product of England was sent to villages. So raw material served into, and this is the way that railway had taken the lead. Okay, so finished product of England was sent to countryside. So raw material of India was exported to England, and the finished product of England was sent to the villages of India. So India served as a beautiful market for British industrial product. Beautiful market for British industrial product. British industrial product. Second point is, the second point is related to that is investment in railways. So investment in railway was exclusive to British investors. Exclusive to British investors. Indians were not permitted to invest in railway. Indians were not permitted to invest in railways. It was exclusive to British investors, and Indians were not permitted to invest in railways. Okay. So those Britishers who got opportunity to invest in railway, they got guaranteed interest plus share in profit. Plus share in profit. They got guaranteed interest plus share in profit. This is the railway. Okay. So in both the ways, exploitation was very unique. Exploitation was done. Okay. So railway had done tremendous damage to the economic system of India. Okay. Then second, social policy, the divide and rule policy. Obviously, divide and rule policy will help in strengthening the British colonial system, and political policy was basically to consolidate after the revolt of 1857. But due to rising intensity of the Indian national movement, British started compromising, and thereafter the British had to leave India. So this is the way that you will prove that throughout the British period, intensity of colonialism keep on rising. Means first two phase, first phase and second phase. In these two phases, the intensity of the colonialism was quite less compared to the third phase, which was a phase of the British Parliament. Which was the phase of the British Parliament. Okay. So intensity of the colonialism keep on changing, keep on rising, but objective of the colonialism always remained the same, and that is the exploitation of India to benefit England. So when British Parliament had taken control over India, the magnitude of the exploitation increased several times. Earlier it was called drain of wealth. We use the word drain of wealth. Okay, but later on it was known as capital flight. So drain of wealth and capital flight, these two words was vehemently used by the economist to explain the colonial exploitation from India. So its impact was wide. Impact of the colonialism, the first thing was it resulted in drain of wealth. It resulted in commercialization of agriculture. It resulted in destruction of handicraft industries. It resulted in growth of agriculture labor. It resulted in rural indebtedness. Growth of agriculture labor and rural indebtedness. So these are the facts and figures you can find here, which is the impact of the British economic policy. Impact of the British economic policies. Okay. Then the next issue was, it is related to look at the question, and the question is, despite limitations, socio-religious reform movement in 19th century succeeded in bringing far-reaching changes in Indian society. Okay, the 19th century Renaissance, look at the question, despite limitations, look at the question, despite limitations. So socio-religious reform movement in 19th century succeeded in bringing far-reaching changes in India. Whenever you talk about the 19th century Renaissance, so 19th century Renaissance, there are Renaissance. There are three major trends. One is Reformation. Second is Revivalism. And third is status quo. So Reformation, Revivalism, and status quo. Reformation means religious reformation. Revivalism and status quo. So Reformation, not only I'm talking about the reform in the Hindu society. There was reform in the Hindu society, Muslim society, and the Parsis also. There was reform in Sikhism. Okay. So here the reformers were confined to their religious cult, and they were looking into the reformation of their religious theme. Okay. Although it was social reform, but this is the limitation, that despite all these efforts, the evils continued. But at the same time, the kind of awareness it had generated, right? That led to the rise of various types of nationalism, that led to the rise of various types of communalism. Look, very easy to find the, I told you that there is a socio-religious reform movement. There are three major trends. One is reformation. Reformation means something good you should maintain in your society, what you consider as a good, and then if you find other good things in other society, you must accept. So synthesis of Eastern and the Western culture. Synthesis of Eastern and the Western culture. Reformation. Synthesis of Eastern and the Western culture. Okay. So here we can say that Raja Ram Mohan Rai, his social, economic and political. So Raja Ram Mohan Rai, through his social reform, economic reform and political reform, generated various types of nationalism. There was political nationalism, there was economic nationalism, so generated the various types of nationalism. There was political nationalism, there was economic nationalism. Okay, because if you understand his social thought, economic thought and political thought, it was quite distinct, right? He was considered as the first modern man. The kind of reform he demanded, kind of economic well-being that he had in mind. So therefore, he was truly a modern man. And because of his social thought, economic thought and political thought, there is a rise of political nationalism in India and economic nationalism. For example, Raja Ram Mohan Rai said that we should establish heavy industries. India should be economically self-reliant. Okay, so obviously these are the fundamentals, which is actually fundamental of economic nationalism. Okay, like political thing, that he admired the British political institutions. He believed in the philosophy of Montesquieu and Voltaire. So he established the Vedant College in which he has asked the student to study the mechanics. Therefore, he was having the huge scientific temperament, and he was very much influenced by the West. So therefore, the political nationalism and economic nationalism, it had started in India. Second was revivalism. Revivalism. You know, this trend was actually represented by Dayanand Saraswati. Dayanand Saraswati, he established Arya Samaj in 1875. He established Arya Samaj in 1875. Okay, and his Arya Samaj's theory that include, look at the social thought. He believed in cultural nationalism. So cultural nationalism of India. Cultural nationalism of India. So cultural nationalism. Then he started the Sudhi movement, which led to the rise of communalism. So obviously that is a big demand, big deal to understand the social processes. So Shruti movement in India, which led to the rise of communism. Okay, economic thought. India became economically self-reliant and then Swadeshi. So formula of Swadeshi was implemented. He was first person who used the word Swadeshi. Swadeshi meant reform from below. Swadeshi means reform from below. So he demanded establishment of handicraft and other industrial locations. So this is also a form of economic nationalism. Okay, but I told you that his ideas always go for the two things. One is the nationalism, other is communalism. Gauraksha movement was started. So Gauraksha movement was for the village empowerment. Gram Uday Bharat Uday. But at the same time, so Gauraksha movement had ultimately leads to the very different wage. It leads to very different wage. So it had given apprehension of the wrong signal in the minds of the Muslims and the Christians. Okay, so therefore Gauraksha movement had started. It had given the wrong signal among the Muslims and the Christians. Okay, then political nationalism. It is very different. The political nationalism had a huge scenario. Huge scenario. So here he said that Gramudev Hind Swaraj. So he was the first person who used the word Swaraj. Right? India should be India for Indians. The concept of Videshi and Swadeshi. So because of his ideas, all the extremists, they got the ideas of the Arya Samajist. Lal Bal Pal, they follow the Arya Samajist doctrine. Okay, and that is the reason why they had added new radical tendencies in the Indian National Congress. Okay, likewise, in the reformist trend, we have the Muslim society, we have the Sayyid Ahmad Khan. Sayyid Ahmad Khan was definitely a reformer. He wanted to amend all the conservative things, like he opposed triple talaq, he opposed uh, polygamy, he opposed Parda system. All three evils was opposed by Sayyid Ahmad Khan, but he was pro-British. He opposed establishment of Congress, but his thought was basically helped him up to some extent modernization of the Muslim women in India. Modernization of Muslim women in India. Modernization of Muslim women in India. Okay, Sayyid Ahmad. Like that, we have a status quoism. A status quoism. So, status quoism was status quoism was basically intended for no change, that is changelessness. Changelessness. So, basically intended for no change, that is changelessness. Status quoism. That idea was very much inspired by Aristotle. So these are the things, then how to tackle the questions and then content that you have to write. Okay, so that's all for the day, and We'll come with the live session tomorrow also with some world history questions. That's all.